I had almost walked out when she finally arrived 30 minutes late. I was sitting alone in a quiet corner of a small restaurant, staring at an untouched cup of coffee and wondering why I had agreed to a blind date in the first place. Then she stepped through the door, looked directly at me, and said something I never expected to hear from a stranger. "You have kind eyes." Those 5 words changed the entire night. Before we get into this heartfelt story, take a moment to subscribe to Kindness Story, like this video, and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Your support helps us share more stories about kindness, hope, and the little moments that can change someone's life. My name is Daniel, and at 35, I had almost stopped believing in blind dates. My best friend, Marcus, was the one who had arranged this one. He kept telling me that I needed to stop working so much and start meeting people again. "She's a good person," he promised. "Just give it a chance." So on a rainy Friday evening, I drove across town and arrived at a small family-owned restaurant 10 minutes early. I chose a table near the window and waited. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Then 30. I checked my phone several times. No message. No call. For a moment, I felt embarrassed. Maybe she had changed her mind. Maybe this was some kind of joke. I was about to stand up when the restaurant door opened. A woman hurried inside, breathing heavily. Her dark hair was slightly wet from the rain, and she was holding a small paper bag against her chest. She looked around nervously. Then she saw me. She walked over and stopped beside the table. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I know I'm late." I smiled politely. "It's okay. Are you Sarah?" She nodded. Then she looked at me carefully. For a few seconds, she said nothing. Finally, she smiled and whispered, "You have kind eyes." I laughed softly because I didn't know how else to respond. That's probably the strangest first compliment I've ever received. She sat down across from me. "I mean it," she said. "You look like someone who listens." That sentence stayed with me. We ordered dinner, and slowly the awkwardness disappeared. Sarah told me she worked as a teacher at an elementary school. She loved her job, even though it was exhausting. Then she explained why she had been late. She had been driving to the restaurant when she noticed an elderly man standing beside a broken-down car in the rain. He looked completely lost, she said. Everyone kept driving past him. "So you stopped?" She nodded. I couldn't just leave him there. She had pulled over, helped him call a tow truck, and waited with him until help arrived. "That's why I was late," she said, looking embarrassed. I smiled. "I think you had a pretty good reason." She looked down at her hands. "My father always taught me that being late is better than being heartless." I didn't know why, but those words touched something inside me. We continued talking. She told me about her students, her favorite books, and the little apartment she had filled with plants. I told her about my mother, who had passed away several years earlier, and how I had struggled to get back to normal afterward. Sarah listened without interrupting. When I finished, she simply said, "I'm sorry." Not the automatic kind of sorry people say because they don't know what else to say. She meant it. After dinner, I noticed the paper bag she had carried into the restaurant. "What's in there?" I asked. She smiled. "Cookies." "Cookies? I baked them for you." I stared at her. "You baked cookies for someone you hadn't even met?" She laughed. "I didn't know if you liked chocolate chip, so I made 2 kinds." We both laughed. It was such a simple thing, but somehow it made the entire evening feel different. When the check arrived, I reached for it. Sarah stopped me. "Wait. What?" She pointed toward a man sitting at another table. He was alone, counting a few crumpled bills beside his plate. "He looks worried," she whispered. I looked over. The man had ordered a simple meal, but when the waiter brought the check, his face changed. Sarah stood up. I watched her walk over and quietly speak to the waiter. A few minutes later, the waiter returned to the man and told him his meal had already been paid for. The man looked confused. Then he looked around. Sarah was already back at our table. "You paid for his dinner?" I asked. She shrugged. "He seemed like he needed a little kindness tonight." I smiled. "You really do this often, don't you?" She looked at me. "Sometimes kindness is the only thing we can give someone for free." That sentence changed the way I looked at her. But the night had one more surprise. When we left the restaurant, the rain had become heavier. Sarah stood under the awning, searching through her purse. "What's wrong?" I asked. "I forgot my umbrella." I opened mine. "There's room for two." We walked toward her car together beneath the small umbrella. Halfway there, she suddenly stopped. "What?" She looked at me with a gentle smile. "I think I understand why I was supposed to meet you tonight." I smiled. "Why?" "Because I almost didn't come." I was surprised. "Really?" She nodded. "I had a terrible week. I was tired. I almost cancelled. But then I saw that old man on the road, and somehow I ended up here." I looked at her. "Maybe you were supposed to stop for him. And maybe," she said, "you were supposed to wait for me." For a moment, neither of us said anything. The rain fell around us. Cars passed on the wet street. And somehow, in the middle of an ordinary Friday night, two strangers who almost never met were standing beneath one umbrella, smiling at each other. We didn't know what would happen next. We didn't know if it would become love. But we both knew something important had happened. Sarah had been 30 minutes late. Yet somehow, she arrived at exactly the right moment. Months later, we still talked about that first night. And every time someone asked how we met, Sarah would smile and say, "He was patient enough to wait." Then she would look at me and add, "And he had kind eyes." Maybe kindness doesn't always look like something big. Sometimes it looks like waiting 30 more minutes. Sometimes it looks like stopping for a stranger in the rain. Sometimes it looks like buying dinner for someone who is counting their last few dollars. And sometimes, kindness is simply listening when someone needs to be heard. We never know what someone else is carrying inside. So the next time you have a chance to be kind, take it. Hold the door. Help a stranger. Listen to someone. Forgive someone. Buy someone a meal. Or simply smile. Because you may think it's a small moment. But to someone else, it could be the moment they needed most. And maybe, just maybe, your kindness could change the direction of their entire story.